right, so moving on along, you had mixed number, proper fraction, and improper fraction. And so if we're talking about those definitions, a mixed number is, we call it mixed because it's part whole and part fraction. So you've got a mix there of fraction and whole number. So 1 1/2 is an example of a mixed number. So then you have fractions, proper and improper. So if your denominator is the smaller number, it's improper. So see how 4 is less than 9? That means it's going to be an improper fraction. But if 3 is smaller, if 3 is bigger than 2, that means it's going to be a proper fraction. In other words, you always want the whole that's on the bottom to be bigger. If the whole is bigger, they call that a proper fraction. If the whole is not bigger, they call it an improper fraction. Okay, so what they're going to do first is they're going to ask you to change these improper fractions. All 3 of these are improper fractions. You're changing them to a mixed number. So remember that when you read this fraction, it's 9 divided by 4. So if you actually went old school and divided it out by long division, this is your denominator over here. The denominator's on the outside. 4 goes into 9 2 times with 1 left over. Okay, so the way that we're going to write that is this. 4 goes into 9 2 times. Okay, so that's your whole number. This part right here is your whole number. This part is your remainder. You take your remainder and you divide it by your divisor. And this is how you write it as a mixed number. So here's your whole number, 1/4. Okay, so let's try the next one. So let's say I asked you to divide 10 into 19. Well, 10 goes into 19 one time with 9 left over. So this one time right here is your whole number. This 9 is your remainder. And this 10 is your divisor. And 1 9/10 would be your mixed number. Your last one is 37 divided by 5. Okay, 5 goes into 37 7 times with 2 left over. So your whole number is 7. Here's your remainder. And you put it over the divisor. And that's how you would change them to mixed numbers. Now at the far side, I said, why can't you change 11/12 to a mixed number? And my answer to that is because 11 is smaller than 12. So it can't divide into it without getting a 0 with a remainder there. So the only time you're going to get a mixed number is if you have an improper fraction, which means if this number on the top is greater. If that number on top is greater, you can have a mixed number. If that number on top is smaller than the 12, you would have, it can't have a mixed number. Okay, so then they ask you to go backwards. Here's a mixed number, change it to an improper fraction. Okay, and the best way I can do that is a little procedure. You're going to times here and add here. Here's how it works. If you have 2 3/8, you're going to times these, which gives me 16, and add this, which gives me 3. Okay, so that's going to give me a 19. So that's what I mean by times and add. Now you're going to take that 19 and put it over the denominator. Here's the denominator, that's what you're putting it over. And so your answer to this one would be 19/8. Okay, looking at the bottom one, we're going to times these. So 7 times 3 is 21. and then you're going to add this one. Okay, so that's going to give you a 25. But then you have to say, you know, it's a fraction, so it has to be over something, right? The denominator here is your denominator here. And that's how you would write it as an improper fraction. Okay, so then you have to order fractions. And the way that you can order fractions is, there's lots of different ways. You can use the butterfly method that I showed you in a video on the module, or you can get a common denominator. And I like the common denominator way. So if you have 7/18, that's great. And then you have 5/6. So I need to get a common denominator, and my common denominator between 18 and 6 would be 18. So if I wanted to turn this one into an 18, I'm going to multiply it by 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top. So this number here is actually 15/18. If you're writing it as an equivalent fraction, this is 15/18. So if we're deciding which one's bigger, 7/18 or 15/18, that's an easy pick. And remember, your alligator mouth goes to the bigger number. So since 15/18 is more than 7/18, that would be the bigger number. Now, when you're analyzing fractions, if you have 7/18 and 5/6, it doesn't matter that 18's bigger or that 7's bigger. That doesn't mean that's the bigger fraction. You have to have an equivalent guide to compare it to. You can't combine 18. You can't compare 18 and 6. You have to get them to be equal. And once you get these two numbers equal, then you can compare them. Okay, when you look at this second one, your choices for 10 and 6, I would choose 30. So if I'm turning 7/10 into 30, I'm going to multiply it times 3. And that's going to give me a 21/30. And I'm turning 5/6 into 30. I'm going to multiply it times 5. So that gives me 25/30. Okay, so 5/6 is 25 and 7/10 is 21. So I know that 25/30 is greater than 21/30, so my alligator mouth points towards that one. Now here's another little way that you can do it using the butterfly method. And you get to pick now. I don't care which way you work it. I just want you to be able to work it one way or another. Okay, remember when we did the butterfly method earlier? This number right here is 42. And this number right here is 50. Okay, so if you're looking at this, you need to see which number is bigger. And since that number on the far side, on the right side, is bigger, it's going to point this way. It's going to point towards your bigger number. You can do that at the top as well. You had 7/18 and 5/6. When you multiply this way, you get 42. And when you multiply this way, you get 18 times 5. Since 90 is more than 42, it would open in this direction, and that's your butterfly method. Okay, name a fraction equivalent to 7/8. Okay, there's lots of different ones. This is like how we're finding a common denominator. So one of the things that you can do to find an equivalent fraction is multiply by something. So let's say I said 2. If I multiply by 2 on the bottom, I can multiply by 2 on the top. And so I could get 14/16. Okay, so that's equivalent. You could say, oh, well, let me multiply by 10. 7 times 10 and 8 times 10. Well, that's 70/80. That's also equivalent. So there's infinitely many choices for equivalent fractions. You just can pick any constant to multiply by, and as long as you multiply them on the top and bottom, you can get something that's equivalent. All right, looking at this next one, I'm trying to fill in the blank. So I can think for a second. If I was trying to make this red equation true, 12 times what would give me 36? Well, I know that to get from 12 to 36, we multiplied by 3. So if I multiply by 3 on the bottom, I can also multiply by 3 on the top, and this number would be 21. So you'd have 21 over 36. Okay, are these equivalent? Okay, there are a couple of different ways that you can do them. Okay, so you can do the butterfly method, or you can find a common denominator, either way. So I think I'm going to go for the denominator way. So let's look at this 11/20th and this 33/60th. Okay, if I'm going from 20 to 30, from 20 to 60, that means I multiplied by 3. If I multiply by 3 on the top, I get 33, which is what I was looking for. So that means that these are equivalent. Because 11 times 3 is 33, and 20 times 3 is 60, so they would be equivalent. Now let's look at the bottom. On the bottom, to get from 7 to 21, I can multiply by 3. So if I multiply by 3 on the bottom, I have to multiply by 3 on the top, which means I'd get a 15/21. Yeah, but that's not what I got here. So what that means is that these are not equivalent, and equivalent means the same thing as equals. Now you're welcome to also do the butterfly method. So if you were doing the butterfly method here, I'm going to use the bottom one because the numbers are a little smaller. I don't know if they're equal or not, so I'm going to multiply this way. If I multiply that, I get 105. And I'm also going to multiply this way. If I multiply this way, I get 140. Those numbers are not equal. So since they're not equal, they're not equivalent. Okay, write with a common denominator. I think we've done those already, but if you wanted to practice them, I'll write the answers up in a little bit, and we'll come back to it. So you can pause this. I'll give you the answers in just a minute. Okay, fill in the blank with less than, greater than, or equal to. So let's try these. With the first one, I think I want to show it to you with the butterfly method. And remember, if you're confused with what I mean by the butterfly method, pause this one and go look at the great little video from a YouTuber that has the butterfly method. Okay, I'm asking, is it less than, greater than, or equal to? So I'm going to multiply this way first. So that's 30 times 11. And I get 330. And then I'm going to multiply this way next, and that's 30 times 1, so that's 30. Okay, so those two numbers are not equal, so that's for sure. And I know that 330 is bigger, so since it's bigger, it's going to look like this. Now another thing that you can do is this. I have 11/30ths already, but if I'm turning 1/3 into 30ths, then what I could do is say, hey, I'm going to multiply by 10 on the bottom, which means I multiply by 10 on the top. So this is 11/30ths, and this is 10/30ths. So 11/30ths is greater than 10/30ths if you prefer that way. Okay, looking at this bottom one, when you do the bottom one, you have 2/5 and 40/100ths. So if you multiply this, 2 times 100 would be 200. And 5 times 40, going the other way, would be 200. So since 200 equals 200, these are equals. And I think the butterfly method is the easiest for that one. There's some reducing there, so those are some that you can practice and we'll come back to. You can pause it and I'll give you the answer in just a minute. Come back to that one. There's some adding there. So I'm going to come back and give you the answers to these, and then we'll do one more video. Okay, so I gave you some that I had already worked, so I gave you some to practice. So I asked you to write with a common denominator. If you were choosing 12 and 18, the common denominator that they go into are 36. And so if you turn them into 36s, you get 2136 and 1036. On the bottom, those are also going to go into 36, 2136, and to turn 2/3 into a 36, you get 24/36. So those were some extra practice problems on write with a common denominator. Okay, I think I did that one already. Okay, the next group was to reduce, and so you have 33/60th, and those reduced by 3. So if you divide the top by 3 and the bottom by 3, you get 11/20th. And then in the bottom one, that one's a little bit harder for me to come up with the terms, and so I divided by 2, and I just kept dividing by 2 over and over until I found one that works. So if I divide 24 by 2, I get 12, and 72 divided by 12 will give me 36. I divide it again by 2. 12 divided by 2 will give me 6. 36 divided by 2 will give me 18. And then I recognize that 6 goes into both. So I divided by 6 in the top and got 1, and divided by 6 in the bottom and got 3. Okay, and I think then you had this one to ask you to add fractions. In the top one, they had a common denominator. So remember, I just kept the common denominator and added across the top. So I got 10/12. That's going to reduce by 2. And in the bottom one, you had 7/12 plus 1/3. So I turned the 1/3 into a 4/12 by multiplying by 4. And when you did that, you get 11/12.